Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. So today I want to go over the best way for you to learn. So whether you're trying to learn how to code or get better at software or something like that, I want to go over a way I pretty much stumbled into a few years ago that has helped me accelerate my learning a whole lot. In fact, I owe a lot of this to Parsity and the businesses that I've started around working with people that want to get into software. So a few years ago, I stumbled upon this method that's really helped me learn a ton faster. Believe it or not, or maybe you will believe this, I'm not the best software developer out there. I've been somewhere around average. I've been below average for sure at a couple companies, and I've been north of average, and I've even done pretty well at some companies where I've been near the top, 10% of software engineers in a pretty small organization. What I'm saying is this has never come naturally to me. It's never been a natural extension of my knowledge to write software. I learned to code in my 30s after never touching a computer for most of my 20s. In college, I didn't even own a computer. And I'm not super old. If you can't tell, if you're watching this on video, maybe you can see, or maybe I hope I don't look super old, but I didn't have a computer for most of my life. I don't really know much about computers beyond what I've learned the last 10 years. So how did I accelerate my knowledge? How did I go from HTML and CSS and some really basic JavaScript to full stack engineering, working with AI tools, and even now teaching myself some linear algebra? I want to share a method that I use that is dead simple. This will be a very short episode that I think will help you out. In fact, this method is so effective that I've been asking Parsity students to do the same thing. And to do this, you're going to need just one tool, a video camera. And you can use loom.com, which is what I like to use. I like to use a tool called Loom. It's a great partially free tool. It lets you record up to a few minutes of video. You can screen record. You can just record yourself. And what's more important is if you use the paid version, you can get the transcripts. And I'm going to explain why this is important in just a minute. So when I wanted to start a business helping software engineers beat the interview a few years ago, this was a fairly successful little business that I started because I saw how important it was to be able to interview well. And I was terrible at this. I mean, really, really bad at interviewing. Like I would go in completely unprepared, and I would just kind of wait to get a question. And I remember people asking me like, what, JavaScript trivia, like explain closure or something like that. And I would just completely freeze up and bumble around like, oh, well, it's kind of like, when you have like curly braces, and it was awful. And one interviewer was kind enough to actually correct me during one of my bumbling, that's actually not how this works. The way that object referential equality works is like this. And he went into an explanation and he explained it so well. And I'm like, damn, how did he do that? So over the years, I got much better at interviewing. I took lots of courses and classes and paid a ton of money to get better at interviewing. Then I wanted to teach other people how to interview well. And so I had to record videos. The moment I flipped on that camera and had to explain into a video what I was attempting to teach, it exposed some big gaps in my knowledge. And this really helped me internalize, go back, fill in these gaps, and then be able to explain them clearly on camera. The funny thing was, teaching people how to interview better and explain these concepts in turn helped me interview better and explain concepts. And I don't think I'm the best interviewer at all. I just know I'm a hell of a lot better than when I first started. I mean, since then, I've been able to get into interviews at Google or get senior software engineering positions or engineering manager positions, things that normally would have been out of my reach in general. Even though I might have had the skills, I was really not super great in the interview portion of the whole hiring game. So how do you do this? How do you go from where you're at right now, where you're barely learning something like JavaScript variables, or maybe you're trying to explore a new language like, TypeScript or Python or whatever, or maybe you're trying to learn linear algebra like me, a person that has no math background, and now I want to dive a little bit deeper into AI and just get some fundamentals down with linear algebra. How do you do this in a faster way? This is not like some hack or something like that that's going to just get your brain to learn all this stuff through osmosis or whatever. Like at the end of the day, you have to take time to actually internalize these concepts. Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode. And the reason why a lot of people listen to this show is because they want to become a software engineer. So maybe you went to a boot camp, or maybe you're just learning to code. And maybe you want to make this the year that you actually become a software engineer. If that's you and you have the time and the dedication and you're not looking for some get rich quick scheme, you should join Zubin and I for a very customized program where we take you from zero through hired with an intensely personalized custom roadmap that we will help you see through step by step to get interviews, pass interviews, and learn the skills that'll make you a professional grade coder. If you're serious and want to start working with us one-on-one, then schedule a call by using the show notes below or apply online at parsity.io/inner-circle. Now back to the episode. So there's this concept called retrieval practice, which basically means that the more you pull information from your memory, the stronger the neural connections get. So teaching other people is like forced retrieval. So if you have to explain a concept, you're not just passively getting the knowledge, you're actively reconstructing it from your memory and making it coherent for somebody else. So there is some science-based effectiveness in this method. And here's exactly what I do in order to force myself into this teaching mode, because I know most people aren't going to have a class or a group of people that are waiting for them to teach, and they probably don't want to get on YouTube and teach, or they probably don't want to start a business like me teaching people how to do software stuff. And they probably don't also want to write online because people get nervous writing online. So what do? Well, when you learn a concept, whether it's recursion or closure, or literally how a function works in JavaScript, turn on Loom on your computer, open a program like excalidraw.com, and I'll have the links to these two resources in the show notes. And this is another free tool. It's like a whiteboard where you can draw on and time yourself. Loom will give you up to 2 or 3 minutes, I think, on the free plan to record yourself and your screen. So record yourself and explain what a function is. No one needs to see this video at all. In fact, at Parsity, we have students trade videos to each other where they explain some technical concept, because guess what you're going to do in an interview? You're probably going to be on a camera. You're probably not going to be in person anymore. Most interviews are remote. And you're going to be explaining a technical concept to a camera, to a stranger on the other end of that camera, right? So you might as well get used to this kind of awkward experience of being on camera and trying to explain a concept to somebody that you don't know. In this case, though, the stakes are really low because it's just you. Now, what you're going to find out from doing this is that you don't really know as much as you think. And this is exactly what you want to have happen. You're going to hit record. You're going to start talking or drawing, and you're going to realize, what the hell am I talking about? Do I even know what I thought I knew? And a lot of times you don't, and that's okay. So what you do is you go back, you fill in some of the gaps, and then you go back and you try to re-explain it. And doing this is going to force you into learning, because by the time you explain this on camera, 1, you have proof. 2, you can go back and look at this and share it if you want to make content from it. Now with AI tools, we can take this even a step further. So here's what I'm doing to learn linear algebra. I'm watching videos like 3 Blue, 1 Brown. He has a terrific YouTube channel where he talks about linear algebra concepts and things like that. And then I'm also reading a book about linear algebra concepts, specifically vectors and matrix multiplication. Basically, how do we represent force and direction with vectors, with a series of numbers that are combined, like in something that looks like an array, if you come from a coding background or something like that. And what I'm really curious about is how these vectors encode words and meaning and things like that, because that's ultimately what AI uses under the hood to understand how to respond back to us. It takes words, it embeds them, it turns them into vectors. It looks at the similarity between the vectors and then gives you something that it thinks would make sense based on this mathematical operation that we'll do against these vectors. So I'm not only explaining things like this into a camera, but now with ChatGPT and using the microphone feature on it where you can like literally talk into ChatGPT, I'm just telling it what I think is happening. I'm like, hey, so my understanding of a large language model is that my words will be embedded into vectors. And then there'll be some sort of mathematical operation where it will look at the cosine similarity of these vectors in order to produce another series of vectors that will then be decoded into words that a human could read. Is this understanding correct or is it incorrect? And if so, how? So now I don't even have to go on camera to do this. I can literally talk into ChatGPT and get a text-based answer off what I'm saying. This is the best way, in my opinion, to learn, because you can quickly verify what you're saying. You can ask more questions as follow-ups. Like I could ask, well, if each word is a vector, then how does it take full sentences? And can I see how the words that you're using right now might be vectorized? And how many numbers are in a vector? And how does this work? And how does this work? And then you keep explaining back. Say, okay, my understanding is X. Is this correct or incorrect? If so, why? Where was I correct? Where was I incorrect? What would you suggest that I do to further my understanding? And then you can combine Loom with ChatGPT by getting the transcript of what you said, copying it, dumping it into ChatGPT, and then just asking it to summarize and verify whether or not you're correct or where you could make improvements to your explanation. So this has a really twofold effect, right? Because one, you're teaching yourself and making yourself learn just faster, right? Which is incredibly important in this industry. The most important skill as a developer that you're going to have is the ability to teach yourself. Tech changes fast. 2 years ago, no one was talking about generative AI. And now overnight, it feels like all the people at Parsity, they're going into internships, and myself, we're working with generative AI at work. We're using OpenAI, API, we're using vector databases, we're using RAG. These things have become popular seemingly overnight and just crept its way into our software development workflow. So if you're not learning these things and understanding them, you're going to get left behind. And the most important skill you're going to have is not whether you can write JavaScript code or something like that, or write TypeScript or write Python. The most important skill you're going to have is how fast you can learn, which is exactly why Zubin and I are so adamant about the students and the mentees we work with learning how to learn and unblock themselves, because that is the number one skill, not whatever technology is hot right now. Those technologies require that you can actually learn them, right? What good is it looking at some massive amount of documentation for a new technology if you don't know how to synthesize that information, right? You want to be able to learn quick. That's what I'm trying to get at. So the second important thing about doing this is, one, you're learning, right? You're just learning faster. Two, you become a much more valuable software engineer. Like I said, I've never been like the best software engineer at really any company I've been at. In fact, if I'm the best in the room, I probably want to leave that company. I learned that lesson the hard way. You don't want to let your skills atrophy. Anyway, so I've never been the best. So how have I kind of gotten around that and got promoted or gotten noticed? How have I basically been patted on the back these years without being the top coder in the room? And a lot of that boils down to how well you can communicate. So that's often what I've been complimented on, or what's helped me to get into like more of a manager or leadership position at the last company I was at, my ability to communicate well. So this is a skill that I've learned over the years from talking into a camera. In fact, if you look at a really old video of me from like 7 years ago, you'll see how ineffective my communication skills were. And over the years, I've practiced. I've had to learn how to talk slower. I've seen what I look like on camera, and I've had to make adjustments in the way I talk and the way I say things in order for me to sound more palatable, you could say. Basically, how do I repackage myself? I used to talk super fast. I used to talk with a lot of slang, honestly, back in the days when I was kind of living a weirder life than now. And I've had to relearn and unlearn some things in order to be an effective communicator. That is a huge skill in tech because, believe it or not, most software developers are kind of shy and they don't like to speak in public. I even have an episode with a guy named Jeffrey Huck. I'm probably pronouncing that way wrong. He's a French dude. Sorry, Jeffrey, I butchered your name. But check that out. It's about public speaking for shy software developers. Super important and critical skill. I hope this is helpful. If you took nothing else away from this, just download loom.com, start speaking into a camera and drawing little drawings on a screen with excalidraw.com. Record yourself, learn where you suck, get better, keep recording, put the stuff out there, run it through ChatGPT, let it tell you where you suck, and then you just incrementally get better. Hope that's helpful. And if you do have a cool video that goes over you explaining some concept or something like that, I'd love to see it. I don't know. Send it to me at brian@parsity.io. Hope you have a good rest of your week, and I'll see you later. That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. If you're serious about switching careers and becoming a software developer and building complex software and want to work directly with me and my team, go to parsity.io. And if you want more information, feel free to schedule a chat by just clicking the link in the show notes. See you next week.